Hey, Hickok 45. These AR-15s are so much fun to shoot. Yes, 223, whatever the caliber, 5.56, 300 blackout, you name it. They're just fun to shoot. But you do want to maintain them. You want to take care of your firearm, whatever kind of firearm it happens to be. A lot of requests to do a cleaning video on an AR-15. Oh, for about 3 years. So I always get around to things sooner or later. That's what we're going to do today. Okay, so let's move over here to the shooting table and do something besides shooting for a change, huh? We have an empty magazine. We have an empty firearm. We are clear. We are definitely clear. Nothing in there. I can see right in that chamber. So what we're going to do is take a look at a couple of different things. Again, I probably do this differently than you do, and maybe some other folks do. Imagine that, me doing something different. But what I wanted to do was give you a couple of different levels of what we do. And actually, there's probably 3 or 4 different levels of the way I clean an AR-15. And any gun, maybe. But they are. There's a couple of things you can do to keep them going. They like to run wet. You want to keep them oiled. I know in the early days of my AR-15ing, I think I ran them too dry. I confess. I'm sorry. But, you know, I guess I kept them clean enough. Maybe it didn't matter. But the AR-15 does like to be run wet. It likes lubricant. It likes some oil. And I have gotten better about that over the years, the last 7, 8, 9 years. I have an A2 I bought in 1984. It's always run just fine. But I've tried to do better about that in recent years. Now, you might be running, shooting a fair amount, and you don't really have time to clean for some reason. There are some things you can do to keep it oiled, and everybody will disagree on how many rounds. So just take that with a grain of salt, of course. But let's say I have fired, I don't know, 1,000 rounds or 2,000 rounds or something. I don't have time to break it down, whatever that might be. I've never been in the military, so I can't address that. But I know there's some things you can do. For example, you know, you got your little gas ports. You can get oil in there, put a drop in there, a couple of drops. You can pull that bolt back. But this is without taking the gun down. And get some oil, and you can see there's plenty there. But I'll put a drop on the bolt there, not necessarily on the face of it, but on the lugs. You can make sure those are lubed. You can even turn it over and get a little bit on the bottom of the bolt there, a drop or two, just to keep it lubricated. And it's better off, even if it's dirty, if it's lubed, while it's dirty, okay? So, and you just have to be the judge, how much you fired it, how wet it was when you started, and all that sort of thing. But then you're back into action, you can just continue shooting if you need to, all right? So that's one level I wanted to at least mention. I don't really do that. I don't know that I've ever done that much, because I'm generally going to shoot some, then I'm going to take it down. I normally don't go to the range or anywhere and shoot 1,000, 1,500, or 2,000 rounds, at a single time. Just don't do that. So what I do is kind of the next level usually, and what that involves is just taking down the takedown pin, the rear one here, and make sure we're taking the bolt out, and the carrier, the charging handle, all that out. Okay, and I normally don't take the upper off. Now I'm doing this out here on the shooting table because there's more room and it's just simpler. The lighting's better. Normally I'm doing this in the reloading room, but I brought all my stuff out here, so I want to kind of show you what I do. So I take it down to this point right here, and I'm just going to show you what I do again. It's worked for me for a long time. And I'm not even going to try to sell you a specific lube. There's a lot of good lubes on the market. This is not what this video is about. I've used Ballistol since 1999 successfully, but there's a lot of good stuff on the market. Now what I do is I'm finished shooting, so okay, I'm going to get some lube down the bore. So I'll just spray down the bore. I'll just hold down the floor. I'll just spray in there. I'll just soak that barrel. I'll let it run. I don't care. Okay, and I'll get it in the lugs there and everything. I try to keep it out of the gas tube up there. I'll show you. Okay, and the gas tube. You can see that comes out. Where's a pointer? Here we go. You can probably there's one little screwdriver. You can see the into the gas tube right there. Not good to spray lube in that. You try to keep that dry generally. Okay, but doesn't really matter anywhere else. Okay. Plus, I'm not turning it upside down as much. So what I will do is spray that down. If I've been shooting it a great deal, I might spray some in there, you know, around where the bolt rides and everything too, and wipe it a little bit. But I'll just put that aside, and I'll just let it soak. You know, I just put that aside, and that's one of the characteristics of Ballistol. It doesn't necessarily eat everything away in 2 seconds. A little time is good. Time is your friend. And then I will look at the bolt. I work on it. Okay, and I generally will go ahead and take it down. Now, you could just spray it down, make sure it's wet, and you're okay. Now, this is not going to be very dirty because I just shot it a few times, but I really didn't want to work on it when it was just filthy. I wanted you to be able to see everything easier. And now these are designed so you can take a bullet and get the little firing pin retainer, cotter pin out there, just like that. Put the ammo away, keep it away from me while I'm cleaning. You pull out that little cotter pin. I usually put those in one place. The firing pin falls out over there, especially out here on the reloading table. I don't want to lose anything. Little cam pin there, bolt cam pin, like that, and then the bolt. Now, I'll usually just spray all that stuff down, let it be soaking. Okay. Now, that doesn't mean I'm going to leave it soaked like that when I put it back together necessarily. Okay. And quite often, if you've been shooting a lot, this will be really dirty, and of course the bolt will be, and you'll have carbon build up on it and everything. We generally, at this level of cleaning, and this level would mean, well, I might shoot the thing again in a few days, okay, and have to go through this again. So I'm not going to try to give it the white glove treatment necessarily, all right? You can see already, just with the rounds fired, there's a little bit of carbon right there, even though it was fired fairly wet, okay? Now, and then you got your gas rings there. Now, what I will do, and same thing on this, I go ahead and get the Ballistol on it. Again, whatever lube or cleaner you use. Now, you got to think about what you use. Some of you use a cleaner and then you use a lube. And this stuff that I use is both cleaner and lube. It's all in one, so I'm actually cleaning. Okay, so I'll spray it down. I don't worry about letting it soak. It depends how bad it is. If it's really bad, I've been known to just soak them in a jar of that stuff. Okay, because I want it to start working on that carbon right away. Now, a little tool I've got my hands on here recently is designed for that. Now, I almost don't need it with this one because there's not much on it. But that is designed to just slip over that little tube there and just get the carbon off. And this would be a great thing, I think, to have in the field, you know, if you were a soldier. I think maybe it was developed by soldiers. I'm not sure. I'm not that familiar with the company. It's catm4.com. And I would recommend this little tool. I will tell you that. It is pretty cool. catm4.com. I'll put it in the description. But this end is designed. You see, it just stays on there. Look at that. It's machined perfectly to fit over that and then to clean the carbon off that. Okay. Now, what I had done before is use something like this. Gunsmith over at Guns and Leather here in the Nashville area, Jeff, handed me some of that one day. It's like a Scotch-Brite or something. I'm not sure what grade that is actually, but that works pretty well too, depending on how bad it is. Yeah, you just clean it off. If it's got really cake, this thing is cool. It really gets it off there. And it also has, see, this little opening is for the firing pin. You slide it down in there. If you've got carbon built up or something on that, it's designed to scrape it off. Okay, I already put some thinking in on that. And then, while we're talking about that, you take a patch and you put it right in here. These may not be the right size patches. I use this sometimes I don't, this part of it, but you get a patch in there and it's designed the perfect size to stick right in there and clean that out. Okay, right where the bolt fits. And I'm pushing right up against that lip back there, see? So it'll scrape off the carbon back there. And then also you got your patching. Again, we're not too dirty today because it was clean before I fired a magazine. Okay, so it's not had a lot of firing through it. I didn't want to be totally filthy and take a 40-minute video just to get it halfway clean. But that's what that's for, and you could do that over and over. Now, what I will do quite often is I will spray in there and let that soak too. And if I feel like the carrier is pretty dirty, I'll soak it down. And I may walk away, you know, do something, go eat. I don't know. We may come out here and do some more shooting, do a video or something. But I have a place to do that, and many of you do too, where you can just leave a gun soaking, and I don't worry about that. So that's how I clean that. Now I make sure I got the worst of it out of there, and it's looking pretty good, especially if I think I'm going to shoot it again, you know, before too long. All right, so for example, the way that is right now, I'd be okay with that. All right, and I look at it, check it out, it looks pretty clean. Don't worry about the oil. It's like a 1911. It's designed to be run with some oil on it, and it's not very dirty back there. Now one thing I do with this too is I have a multitude of things I've just dragged out here. What I will use sometimes, I mean, you look at that, that's about what, a 45 caliber hole there. Sometimes I'll just run a patch on this. This is actually a Glock cleaning brush, you know, one of those that comes with a Glock. Put a patch on it and just run it in there, you know, help, you know, get all the dirt out. Maybe even the other side, maybe put another patch on it, and to make it, you know, bigger for that area, you know. And so you just experiment. You know, most of you that have guns have a shotgun. You might find a shotgun cleaner. Maybe you got a 410 attachment that fits perfectly or something, just whatever. I find that to be true with an AK-47. You clean the gas tubes and, you know, different things like that. You say, well, I've got a 30 caliber gun here I'm cleaning. I'm not sure what cleaning tool to use. And so you end up using whatever fits, you know. So the main thing is to just get it done, all right? So that's actually not bad right there. And this is in pretty good shape because I didn't, you know, again, it wasn't all that dirty. Now, one thing I use on this just about every time is I just cannot resist going through there with a pipe cleaner. Even if I'm pretty sure it's pretty clean, I like to run a pipe cleaner through, and that always does a good job. Makes certain that there's no obstructions there. Of course, the firing pin tells you that too. So that looks good, not a problem. And you want to make sure your little gas rings there are spaced, a little gap there. They're not right, you don't have gaps right together. So that's supposed to be important. I don't always check it, and I never have had a problem, but it's something you're supposed to do. So that looks pretty good. Then I'll just put it right back in there, and because she's ready to go. Make sure your extractor's over there where it ought to be. There, and put your pin back in, and you're ready to go. Now, one thing I didn't do, what I will do usually is also run a pipe cleaner down through the gas key here, which is what that is. Okay. Sometimes a Q-tip will almost fit in there. I'll make sure that's clear and in good shape. I don't put oil down in that. I don't think it matters, but I normally don't put oil down in that. I just make sure it's clean. I'll even use alcohol to make sure it's good and clean, you know, lots of times. Okay, because that's where, those of you who don't know, that's what slips onto the gas tube, and you know, the old gas or the direct impingement type of operation that you have with the typical AR-15 is, you know, it forces all the gas back through there and comes right down on the bolt and impinges right on the bolt. So as they say, these things throw up on themselves every time you pull a trigger, so you get all that gas and mess down in the bolt. And that's why they get a carbon buildup, you know, pretty easily. Okay, but they tend to run even when they're a little dirty. They crank on as long as they're oiled well. So you know, they're really not as finicky as a lot of people like to think they are, as far as I'm concerned. And then I have, of course, these guys over here soaking, and so I'll wipe them off a little bit. I don't want oil just hanging on, but they should be greasy. You know, if you use grease, you'd want to put a little grease on the cam pin probably. Just get some oil on your fingers. Put that back in. It only goes in one way, so it's not a big problem. Then you have to spin it around to get the firing pin through it. And then the firing pin, yeah. Now some people oil the firing pin or grease it. I don't think it really has to be greased or oiled. Put it back in. Slides up through there. And then the little cotter pin back in. You know, and you're basically back in business. It's not a difficult thing to take a bolt out, is it? It's pretty simple. And then I will look at the charging handle, and of course this one's pretty clean, but I'll make sure it's lubed. You want to put a little lube on it, just finger lube it, because there's friction involved there, and they will wear definitely on the right side because you're pulling on the left side. So you want to make sure that's lubed. And then in terms of lubing all this, because it's clean now. Let's say it's clean enough. It's clean. Maybe it's perfectly clean. Well, same old thing. You want a little oil on the rings, which I normally will put that on there before I put it back in there. I didn't do that, but I can get to it right here. Put a drop or two on that. Some oil on the bolt there on the lugs. Okay. Now a lot of people have a cute little can and they'll do a little drop and a little drop. You know, I just spray it. Okay. A little spray here and there. Then you don't have to just soak the whole carrier. You have bearing surfaces here where it rubs on the receiver, and you can just get some there. I only got a little bit on the bottom too. I don't know if it, oops. And I don't worry about getting too much. I just wipe off what I don't like. Same thing up here. You know, your bearing points, like right in here, right here, a little oil there. Okay. And then, you know, I can just wipe off excess, but it's just not a pure science. You want to, if anything, probably have a little too much on there. It's never hurt anything in my book. I've never had problems because I had too much oil on my bolt or too much oil on my carrier. I've never had oil flying back in my face or anything. Now I don't do crazy and overdo it, but that is pretty well lubed, and I think it would operate just fine. And then what I do, now again, I'm talking about what we do most of the time. I just go ahead and use a snake. I like these bore snakes. And you could use, if you don't have a bore snake or you don't like bore snakes, you could take a patch or several, a 22 caliber patch, put it on something like this and run it through there. Now it's recommended you don't pull them back through. Now, I don't know. I tell you the truth, I do that most of the time myself. But you can push patches through, take them off until they're clean. Again, it depends on what you're doing. If you're getting it ready for the museum, you know, you might want to do that until you can't find any dirt on it. What I do is typically I just use a bore snake, run through there. Before I do that though, I will quite often grab some Q-tips and work on it a little bit because I do have a fair amount of oil in there, and I will just kind of clean up some of that in the right there around the lugs, make sure there's not a lot of excess oil. Because remember now, this oil, the Ballistol, both cleans and lubes. So it's not like I have some high-powered cleaner in there that's going to eat anything up. It's all doing the same thing. Okay. I go through a lot of Q-tips. Some people don't like Q-tips for gun cleaning. They're afraid some little speck of cotton might be left somewhere. But again, I've never had any trouble with that. Maybe you have. Okay, so I get that kind of clean. All right. Now you can be pretty fastidious about all this and just obsessive. But think about it. If you go out and fire this thing 400 or 500 times, would you expect to have any trouble? No. You'd be able to expect to fire it a few more hundred times. But think about it. Use some common sense. After you have fired the first 3 or 4 magazines, you got some dirt in there. There was carbon. There was some buildup even from that one magazine I fired. You would have some buildup, but you're expecting it to still run. You know, at some point, 1,000 rounds or whatever, 1,500, you might need to put a little more oil in. But you're expecting it to run with some dirt in there. All right, so, you know, so worrying about a molecule of cotton, you know, might just be a little too obsessive, you know, when you get right down to it. The main thing is you don't want, what I always think about all my firearms is I don't want the thing to deteriorate. There's never any rust on any of my firearms, ever. Never has been, I know of. I may have a black powder gun right now sitting somewhere. It's not perfectly clean, but it's soaked in Ballistol. There's enough Ballistol in that barrel. Doesn't matter. It could sit there for 50 years, and I could go clean it further if I wanted to. But it's fine where it is, you know, because of that. So, all right, that bore looks like a mirror. Beautiful. Okay, and there's still enough oil left around those lugs and everything. I would possibly at that point say that's all right, pretty good shape. I think we might shoot this next week. We're going to do a video in 3 days or whatever. So I'm going to put it back. I got the charging handle lubed. The bolt is lubed and ready to go. So I'm going to stick him back in there. He's ready to go. That's pretty much the process that I use most of the time. Okay, that's kind of a level 2. All right. Now, that will work. That works for me. It's well lubed, and again, you can always lube it more right there, not without any problem. It's all accessible. Okay. Now, let's say I don't know when I'll shoot this gun again. Let me take this thing apart and do a little bit better job maybe on it. because I'm going to stow it away, and I'm going to be shooting, one of my other ARs I know, but I'm not sure when I'll be shooting this one again. Well, I might take it all the way apart, and I'm not going to do that, but I'm just going to kind of talk about what I would do. A little bit, take it maybe a step further. There's things you can do that you might want to do. And mainly this is kind of a basics video. You don't want to be afraid of these guns. You might be thinking about buying an AR-15, and I don't want to go, they're kind of complicated. I don't think I want any part of that. Well, they're not that complicated. They're pretty simple. You know, you see how easy, even I can do it. Look at this. I can take that bolt out, your firing pin, it's not a problem. I got the cam pin there. Just aren't that many parts. You can even take the bolt apart. Where's my punch? I use it as a Glock punch. I tend to use most of the time. But the extractor is another thing you want to keep track of. I've never really had much trouble with them. But make sure the spring on the extractor, is in good shape. And at the next level, I will also, if it's a Saturday morning, nothing going on, I'm going to get the AR out and make sure it's really clean. Punch that pin out. There's your extractor. Make sure your spring looks good. And it also gives you access into your bolt. If you want to clean it better, you can do that. It's just not a problem at all. These guns are pretty simple to work on. They're designed that way. Imagine that. So I will do that, and I'll clean on the bolt to the board. I make a little more and make sure there's not a speck of carbon on it anywhere. And then I might even take out the buffer tube and spring. I don't take that out very often. It just generally doesn't need much cleaning, to tell you the truth. I'll leave my tools. But I don't put oil on this either. I might get a rag and wipe it down, just wipe the spring off. I haven't done that in a long time. It needs it now, But I don't put oil on that. I don't know that anybody really does. And then pop that back in, Okay. So I'm kind of talking about the next step here, some things that I might do. Also, might look at the lower a little bit more carefully and see how it's looking. And I'll spend a little more time in the interest of, just the time here on the video. I don't want to, take an hour on it, but I would just look down in there and I'd make sure I've got a drop of oil in the spring, the hammer spring there, and different things like that. The safety pin, maybe even these pins. Just make sure everything is oiled. I mean, there's moving parts, obviously. So if you haven't put any oil on it in 10 years, or for a while, you just want to make sure everything is working, okay? And all the parts seem secure, no problem with it. Okay, so with that, and then with the upper, like I said, I would make sure the bolt's cleaner. I might put a little more time in on the carrier, just make sure it's perfectly clean. Okay, kind of like I do with my Glock every now and then. I break down the slide, and just there's just nothing. But when I finish with it, it's perfectly clean. Same with your gas tube. I often neglect that, I know, but I have some long pipe cleaners. Somebody must have some long pipes, right? And you can buy these for cleaning the gas tube. So I might run one up there and get in that gas tube. There we go. Yeah. And I might take the forearm off, and you have access to everything a little bit better. So, just some other steps there that you can take. Now you'll notice, see that's clean. I don't see anything on that, any carbon or anything. So that's usually not a problem. But there's other steps. That would be like the next step, perhaps, maybe step 3. And then maybe step 4 would be just taking every little piece off and, going to that real obsessive level with it. But the AR-15 is just not a problem to clean. And it's kind of fun. Fun to break it apart, clean it, and get it back in shape. Our bolts back together. So where's my carrier? There it is. Now your carrier, you want to check your gas key too, make sure that's not loose, and generally it won't be if it's staked like this. This is a Colt, and they stake them. I think I brought another one. Yeah, I brought one out here. This is an extra carrier and bolt I actually have, and you notice that one's not staked. I'm not sure who made that one, but it's not staked, so it could loosen up on you because it gets really hot, obviously, and this is something you want to check. Okay, so let's put the bolt back in. There we go, cam pin. And again, this only goes in one way, so I mean, if you just bought an AR, you haven't even had it apart yet, you really can't mess it up like this. These pins only go in one way. Okay, firing pin. I don't think you'll put the firing pin in backwards by mistake or anything like that. Now again, in this step, I didn't really do it. I just talked about it. But I have actually, this thing could look like it's brand new from the factory. Okay, I spent a little time on it. I had a Saturday morning with nothing to do. And again, I want to make sure everything is lubed just as it is before I put it back together. Okay. My charging handle, bolt carrier, and gun back together. And again, a little attention to that. Make sure it's perfectly clean, lubed well. And this is actually part of the fun of owning one of these, because they're so simple to work on. Not a problem at all. I always enjoy it, to tell you the truth. I enjoy breaking down a firearm and cleaning it a little bit more thoroughly. I, in fact, did that this past weekend with a couple of Glocks. I hadn't had to slide apart in a while, and just enjoyed breaking them down. And I advise you do that every now and then, and give it a really thorough cleaning. And now, of course, you want to function test it, make sure everything feels right, and fire it, of course, if you can. Like I say, now these are again, before we wrap up here, these bore snakes come in all calibers. If you've never seen one of these, they don't bite. They might make a good weapon. No, they're really handy. I avoided them for a long time, but I really like them. And you can wash those and reuse them. Some of you may not like them. One thing I didn't show you, I meant to stick in there, is a chamber brush. This is designed, I was going to put it in. I tell you the truth, I don't really use that very much, but some people do. That's designed, as you can tell by looking at it, for just cleaning the chamber and then the lugs. So when you have it apart, you just push that in there and it cleans out that part. But I just don't have trouble with that. Standard rods, anything else here I didn't show you? I guess not. You can see some of the things I have, and I don't worry about it being messy. I don't worry about spraying lube around. This is non-toxic, and it's just not a problem. The Ballistol, I've used this again since 1999. So whatever lube you like that works for you, that's what I recommend. Just make sure you use it. And if you use it and you test it, you've shot the gun, you've cleaned it, and you've gone through that repeatedly, as I have, you know whether it works or not, right? So, the lube wars are like the bullet wars or the caliber wars. So many people that are caught up in lube religion, bullet religion, caliber religion, and all that kind of thing. It gets weary. It gets, you get tired of hearing it, don't you? So let's not get into that at all. But just find something that works for you, whatever it is. There's a lot of good stuff on the market. Some people use motor oil. I used Mobil 1 for a long time. I've used other kinds of lubes. They all tend to work. So I think I've mentioned everything I wanted to. I wanted to try to keep it basic, but just mainly show you and tell you what I do. And again, that's what I do. It has worked for me. I've had an AR since 1984, and that has worked for me. Okay? So hopefully that's of some benefit to you, because this is one of the most popular types of rifles, on the planet today, and they must be selling, I don't know, thousands a day in this country at least. So life is good.